FOG number 5 is Chris Close. While every FOG and Queenslander has a passion and desire to pull on that Maroon Jersey, it's fair to argue there has not been a more passionate Queenslander than Chris Choppy Close. An Origin original, Choppy played 9 Origin matches and has the distinction of being named man of the match in the first 2 games in 1980 and 1981. As well as playing for Queensland, Choppy was a manager of the team under 3 coaches, Paul Vorton, Wayne Bennett and Michael Hagan. A BRL premiership winner with Valleys, Chris Close also played more than 160 games for Manly and the Gold Coast, as well as 3 test matches for his country.
Chris Close, thanks so much for your time. What does it mean to you to be a FOG?
Look, I was one of the players that played under both banners. So I was a Queensland player before the FOGs came about. So that means a lot to me as well. There's a history for me that, a lot of the newer players don't understand, and I think the fans have forgotten too about the Queensland days prior to Origin. Rugby league didn't begin in 1980 when Origin started, but it certainly was the beginning of Queensland having a, rejuvenated spirit within the game and bringing that to the fore and really putting some purpose into what we believed in and what we wanted to do, and that was to beat New South Wales. So for me to be a part of that, I feel so privileged and honoured to be selected in 1980 to go out and represent Queensland in that game. And, I felt like it was a very, very important task and a great honour to be representing our great state back then. And I still feel exactly the same way now. Nothing's changed.
We'll get to that end point soon, but let's start with the journey. Born in Rocky, what was life like growing up?
I didn't spend a lot of time in Rocky. I was born there, that's for sure, and then we moved and we went out to down to Harvey Bay, funny enough, and that's where I started my rugby league journey at Pyalba State School, and then we moved out into the South Burnett area, and I started at Proston and then joined the Wandai Club, and I suppose that was the launch pad for the journey for the rest of my life, in a game that I absolutely love.
What was life like growing up in regional Queensland in those days?
It's fantastic. Things were different. The clubs were very community based, and not that there's much difference in that now, but it was a different scenario, and there was a lot of support. My dad was the policeman at Proston, so he used to round up 6 or 7 of us every training afternoon and put us in the car full of petrol supplied by the Queensland state government, which allowed us to go into Wandai and join the club and play in there, and those sort of things sort of probably don't happen like that today, but it was just a great feeling, and when you were part of a club like Wandai in a regional area, you got to go to watch the senior games as well. Our family became very much a rugby league family, and we'd go to watch all the games. We'd travel and we'd take picnic lunches, and I got to know all the players, local players. They were my heroes. I wanted to be them when I grew up, and we didn't have much television coverage of rugby league, so you were sort of in a position where you got to know those local guys that were playing, and they become so important in your life to aspire to.
What age did you start playing?
I was about 6 or 7, I suppose, my first interaction, and then from then on it was full time. I played from probably 7-year-old up until I finished playing at about 35, 36 years of age, and then I had a great opportunity to be involved in the game at the highest level for a long period of time, and that was also really satisfying.
So when, from that 6 to 7, it was all fun, I suppose, as a young kid growing up in country Queensland. When did it start getting a little bit serious for you? When did you start thinking that, or knowing that you're a handy player?
Well, it sort of started, I went to Beaudesert and things started to change. My body shape changed, and I become, bigger, and I always had great speed as a kid. I could, represent the district in sprints and all those sorts of things. But then my body started to get bigger, and I started to play at Beaudesert in that junior league, and I started to make Brisbane rep teams from Beaudesert, which was pretty much unheard of in those days. So I first played under 15s, I think, and in that team was Wally Lewis and Paul Vorton, and I was 5'8". I got picked at 5'8" outside Wally in one of those games, and then it sort of progressed, and I kept playing in that representative arena until I actually got picked to play first grade for Beaudesert when I was only 17. And I knew then that, there wasn't, and there were no other 17-year-olds playing within the competition at that stage. So I started to realise that there was an opportunity for me to be part of something that, I really wanted to be part of. And thankfully I was blessed with that turn of speed and a fair bit of size. So it helped me in my endeavours to go on with it.
So as a senior footballer, we'll take it, first stop Beaudesert, then you headed to Valleys, a team that you adored growing up. How'd you end up with Valleys?
Well, I ended up via Cunnamulla. I went to Cunnamulla. My dad bought a pub. It's the greatest moment in your life when your father buys a pub. So I went out to help him, get set up. I was working in the local pub at Beaudesert at the time. So I went out there and as, history says, I got an offer to play out there. I'd already signed a contract with Beaudesert, but I'd sort of worked my way out of that with the president of the club at Beaudesert, Ronnie Willis, who was one of the most remarkable blokes I've ever met in my life. And I rang Ronnie and I said, look, my dad's out here, mate. He's got a pub and he can drink beer, but he's not much good at serving it. So I'm going to give him a hand. Do you mind if I let that get out of the contract? So he said, no, mate, you do what you need to do for your family. And I stayed at Cunnamulla, and they hadn't won the premiership for 20 years. And I captained the team, and we got through the competition, and I scored 54 tries for the season, Mark, and we won the premiership. And that's when I went to Valleys. I got an offer from Valleys through a friend of ours, a bloke called Tommy Duggan, and we were great family friends with the family for a long time. And both Liam Duggan and Tom Duggan had played for Queensland, and Tommy was at Valleys at that time, and he obviously knew what I was doing out west. So they asked me to come and play there. And
how old were you?
I was 19. We had a great team. We had a team that was just brim full of very, very good players, and we had a great year. And we culminated with beating South 26-0 in the grand final.
You speak about people forgetting that rugby league existed before 1980. People tend to forget too that the Brisbane comp before 1988, when the Broncos arrived, was huge. What was that year playing for Valleys and playing in a grand final at Lang Park for basically a teenager like?
Very, very, very good. It was a popular league, and we do forget that. And I think that's a thing that really we've lost in the past. I played probably 70 games in that competition, whereas you don't get counted for that now. They look at your games in the NRL and they forget that you played prior to that. So,
well, name some of the players in that 79 grand final.
Well, Wally Lewis, Mel Meninga, Bruce Astle. The names just keep coming out. Vic Wheeland. All of these players were capable of playing anywhere in the game. They were great players, and they just hadn't had the opportunity, or the money wasn't here to pay the same salaries as what the New South Wales players were getting from the poker machine rich clubs down there. So it was a really tough competition, and they don't come any better than Wally and Mel. So we all played in that game, and the legend goes that Wally still rings up Wayne Bennett every now and then and says, "Have you scored yet?"
Then you ended up at Redcliffe in 1980. Yeah,
I was sort of fielding a lot of offers to go to Sydney at the time, and I got a phone call from Donnie McLennan, who was the secretary at Redcliffe, and he said, "We'd like to get you over to Redcliffe to play Chop." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm talking to a few Sydney clubs." And anyway, they actually came out with an offer that matched what they were offering me in Sydney, and he said, "I'll fly out to Cunnamulla on Saturday and get you to sign on." So I did, and that's how I ended up at Redcliffe. I went from Valleys, and we won the premiership in Valleys, so I'd played for Queensland in '79 as well. So I was at a reasonable level of achievement by that stage. So they were keen for me to go there, and I had 2 great years at Redcliffe.
Well, 1980, obviously a pivotal year as well, with the first Origin match. You'd mentioned that you had played for Queensland in 79. Of course, 1980, there was 2, it wasn't a 3-match series.
No.
You would have played for Queensland before Origin.
I did, yeah.
So what was that year like, having played for Queensland pre-Origin in the same year as Origin, the difference in that?
We were really excited by the concept that we would get some of those players back, and 1980, to get those players back into the team that we grew up idolising as well, it was a magic thing, and we did our best under the normal Queensland banner, but we just didn't have the same polish as what they had with those players that had gone down and excelled in that New South Wales Rugby League competition. So it was exciting. It was disappointing that we couldn't win without the concept changing, but when we sensed the opportunity for it to be a stronger team, then we were all pretty much excited by it. There were a lot of us still here, residents still here, that were playing for Queensland at the time. I think maybe 1980, the first Origin, there was probably 8 players that were 21 years of age or younger, which is really ridiculous, to have that many players come together in one group. But we sort of felt more aware of what would change than I think anyone else did. I don't think New South Wales were expecting us to lift that little bit like we did, and we took them by surprise, mate, with the contribution of Arthur.
I wanted to ask you about that, but I also want to ask you your expectations, having played for Queensland pre-Origin. Were you confident that you'd be selected, or what was your mindset heading into waiting to hear whether you were going to play in that first game?
Look, you always feel that you're an opportunity, but you never ever count your chickens before they hatch. So I was hopeful that I'd get taken into that concept, and that year I'd also represent Australia. So it was a really milestone year for me. There was only 2 Queenslanders, resident Queenslanders, that made that Australian team, and that was myself and Rowan Hancock. So we'd already toured New Zealand and played for Australia, and then came back to play the 3rd Origin game. So there was a lot of expectation and a lot of excitement about the game and having a better team and being able to get in there. So being in the Australian team at the time, and I'd played in the interstate games earlier, so I was pretty confident that I'd be selected in the 80 side.
And when you were, and when you all got together, was it immediate clicking that this is something?
Well, it was right from the get-go, Mark. We went to training at Brothers Ground, and Arthur was the captain, and John McDonnell was the coach. And John was a tremendous player himself, and broke a lot of records in rugby league in areas that he played. But he was sort of smart enough also to realise that Arthur was bringing a lot to the format. And I'll never forget, we got in a circle at the beginning of the training session, and Arthur looked us all in the eye, and he said, "Listen, you know what?" He said, "I want to tell you something. I think we can win this game." He said, "I didn't come up here to play second best." He said, "I want you blokes to understand that we can win this game." And he said, "They've got 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs and an arsehole, exactly the same as us. And if you don't think you can beat them, there's the gate. See you later." Wow, that when a bloke like Arthur Beetson stands up, and he was a big man, and he just has this charisma about him, this attraction, and when he talks to you, you listen. And I don't know how anybody else felt at that moment, but I would have, I would have committed murder for him. There's no doubt about it.
What was the night like? Take us back to that night in 1980 where Origin was born.
For me, it was a remarkable night. I mean, I had so many things go well for me, and the first thing, as I've already mentioned, was I got to put my bag down beside Arthur, and I watched him prepare, and he prepared like a warrior going to war, and it was almost surreal, and I just watched everything that he did. And because he's such a big man, he has this presence, and And he was quiet but very purposeful in what he did. And I remember the first thing he did was he got his jersey and he put his jersey on, and he got this bloody stocking that was full of resin, which is what they put on their hands to stop the ball from slipping. And he got it in his hand like this, and he stood up and he just patted his chest with it like a warrior. And then he put that down and he reached into his bag and he pulled out a big jar of Vicks or Vaseline or whatever, and he stuck his big fingers in it and he just stuck it up both nostrils of his thing, and it was all hanging off his cheeks, and he had all this powder on his jersey down his arms. And I thought, holy Jesus, this is serious. We've just got to do everything we can to make sure we support him. And I had no other option. I just went out there and followed his lead.
What are the memories of the game like?
Great. They expected Arthur to wane, because he was 35 at that stage of his life. And, to be competing in that competition at that stage, at that level, it's a big ask. But he rose to the occasion and he just led with the consummate ease that you would expect somebody with his ability to do so. And we followed. Everything that he did reinforced the fact that what he said to us at that moment, it looked like that we could do that. So I gave everything. I remember that night, I gave everything I had. I came off the field. There wasn't another ounce in me to give. And as a result of that, we, with Arthur's direction and the way we played as a team, and then, for me to get the man of the match, I was just so excited and filled with pride and achievement. And I knew that my mum and dad would be sitting there thinking, wow, how good's this? So it was a great night, a magic night for me.
Where does that sit in your list of achievements, to be man of the match not only in game one but game two as well?
I really, I think for me, and I hate to sound like a big head, I felt I deserved it. I gave everything. I did in 1981 as well. I left nothing in the tank, and I would have, as ridiculous as this sounds, I would have gone to the ends of the earth to win those games. It was just so important for me, and I pushed myself in every ounce of everything that I did on the field. So for me, it was a great, achievement. When you've done your best and the outcome is, on your side, there's no coming back from that. You'll never forget that for the whole of your life. And I haven't. I've never forgot what it felt like and how it felt to, push myself. And, I hear athletes talking about different things and talking about when you go from, being just a normal performer into the next. And sometimes it feels like there's a portal that opens up and you go into that portal. And when you go into that portal, you can't do anything wrong. You're in this moment of achievement in life, in sport, that you can't get any better. And that's how it was for me in that game in 1980. The portal opened, I stepped in, and I never stepped out of it till the game was finished.
Arguably, you are the most passionate of all FOGs. I'm sure if we took a poll, everyone would put Chris Close at the top of the most passionate Queenslander to have played. Where does that come from?
It comes from a history of being involved before Origin and being treated with disrespect and indifference, by not only the players from the other state, but the administrators and the way that they just sort of dismissed us and said they called us easy beats on a footy show down there one day. I'll never forget that as long as I live. And we're proud human beings. We're not second-rate citizens. Queenslanders are part of, the birth of this country and the way that we've sort of presented ourselves. So for them to take pot shots at us personally, and then to degrade our state and say the things that they did. And then, I went on the trip to New Zealand and I watched them, on different occasions. They showed disrespect towards Ryan Hancock, who was a remarkably gifted player, and he played his heart out when he got the opportunity for Australia and for Queensland. And to see them treat him with that disrespect really didn't sit well with me. And I got a serious injury prior to coming back in the last game that we played over there, and I burst a blood vessel in my thigh with a cork thigh. So I had no sleep and I was in a lot of pain and I couldn't bend my leg, and we had to get on the jumbo to come home, and my seat was in the middle of a row. And there were 4 guys sitting in a exit row with nothing in front of them, which meant I could have kept my leg out. And I just said to those guys, would one of you guys mind, swapping seats with me? I can't bend my leg. And they just looked at me and laughed. So I was in pain for the entire flight, and I got home, and I think the timing for that first game was just incredible, because it was about 3 or 4 weeks after that we actually played the first Origin. So I was ready to kill somebody. I didn't care. I wanted revenge, and I was out there, with that mindset.
And you're also part of that, I suppose, controversial '85 tour of New Zealand as well.
Yeah. When Terry Fernley decided that he wanted to change the team that had won, and I was a victim of a misunderstanding that miscommunication that he made to me, and on the back of that I got dropped to the reserve bench, and I was absolutely filthy that could happen. But anyway, that's exactly how we were treated. That's how Queenslanders were. If it had been a New South Welshman, it wouldn't have happened. As a matter of fact, they promoted a New South Welshman from the bench into the team after a winning game. I don't get that, but anyway, that's what happened.
Did the hard times shape you more than the good times?
I think the good times shape you better. The hard times give you the resolve and the purpose and the desire to rectify them. But the good times make you feel better, and when you do that, like we did in 1980, 81, well, those first 5 or 6 years of Origin was all Queensland. It was we were dominant, and certainly makes you feel a lot better than being beaten for 35 years in a row.
Where does managing a Queensland side sit with you? You managed under Fatty that miraculous 1995 series, and great memories of you, the emotion of every Queensland victory. What did managing Queensland mean to you?
I almost felt like I was the guardian of the Queensland spirit, and I give everything I had. I was taught by the best, Dick Tosser-Turner, the person who was responsible for the FOGS organisation, and he instilled that into me, how important it was that we watch what we do, and we make sure that the players understand that there is a real commitment here, that when you come into that team as a player, it's not like a club game. It's not like you're playing for your club where you've got another chance the week after and you go through a series of 16, 18 games a year to get to a result. Origin, you get one crack at it, and every game counts. Every game's remembered for either winning or losing, and you're in that, and you're part of that. But more than that, you represent the people that live in this state. Not just you, not your family, not just your family, but every man, woman and child that lives in this state. You have an obligation to perform at your very, very best. And if you don't do that, you don't deserve to wear the Maroon Jersey. So that's what I wanted to instill into the players, whichever way I could. So when you talk to them and you tell them the stories, and you make sure that they understand where we've come from and where we're going to, it makes it a lot easier for them to be part of that. And I was so privileged to have that role as a manager, not only to look after the players when they weren't in the game, but have that opportunity to speak and influence and keep that spirit burning.
Was it hard for you to sit there and not run out?
Always is. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But you know what is really nice is to sit there and watch the calibre of player that Queensland has always been able to produce, run out and do it for their state. And there's nothing greater. There's not a Queenslander that's played that hasn't given everything they've got. And we're very lucky in that sense that it doesn't matter where they were playing or what level they were playing at. When they get picked, they always come up and they always rise to the occasion. We don't always win, but sometimes you can do your best and not win. Sometimes the opposition is just a bit too good for you. But we have never ever been accused of giving up, and we never will.
Who has had the greatest influence on your career?
I would say there's probably a few people. My father, number one. Dad was a quiet achiever, and he just went about his business and took me wherever I needed to go and was there for me, and made sure that I got what I needed to get and went where I needed to go. So he was probably the mainstay in those early years. And I was so lucky to meet guys like Arthur Beetson and John McDonald and Ron McAuliffe. Ron McAuliffe was a remarkable human being, and he could make you feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And then from there I met guys like Ken Arthurson, and Ken Arthurson had a remarkable influence on my career and what I did. So I was very lucky that I got to meet some tremendous mentors, some great people to, get great advice from. And, it's been a great journey for me to have those people in my life.
You also managed to play the game in a golden era, particularly, when you look back at the players you played with for many, many years, all born around the same time. Can I ask you an unfair question? Is there one that stands out?
Yeah, definitely. Will never be anybody, in my eyes, that can play the game like Wally Lewis. And Wally, gets as we get further away from his playing days, people question, why was he so revered? Well, he could do anything. He could do everything. There wasn't a part of the game that Wally wasn't strong at, and I have never met another player as complete as what Wally was. And not only could he play the game, he was a bloody good actor as well. So, we used to always say Wally'd go down with dandruff, but a lot of those things were ploys. A lot of those things were opportunities for him to, influence the referee and all those things. So he had every part of the game, he had it covered, and he also had the psychological part covered as well. So great performer, never be another Wally Lewis.
As we sit here today and you look back and we reminisce about a wonderful career, what goes through your mind when you talk about your Origin career, your international career, your NRL Brisbane Rugby League career? What are your memories?
Oh, look, I don't talk about it much, to be fair. These opportunities are great opportunities for me to talk about it, and it's the only time I really talk about it. I often think about it. I think how privileged I've been and how lucky I was to be in that era, to be part of the birth of a concept that has been the cash cow of the NRL forever. That sits really well with me. But I sit down and reflect on it sometimes. But I don't think that I've done anything special in the fact that everything that I set out to do, I nearly did. Most of it came to fruition, and I was never the greatest player on the ground, but I always gave everything I had, and there were players there that will be remembered for much longer than I will. But from where I sit and what I look at for myself, I'm very happy with what I've done and what I've achieved.
Young Queenslanders, just finally, Chris, young Queenslanders in years to come, when you and I are no longer here, who might be watching this video and in years to come, what message would you like to send them, particularly those that are fortunate enough to have the opportunity of having their name read out to represent Queensland in years to come? What message would you like to give to them as they embark on a career like yours?
My message is really simple. You've got to understand that to be read out, to be named in a team that represents this state, the responsibility that goes with that never wanes. It's always going to be the same. You're representing the entire state, and you need to be ready for that. And if you're not ready for that, and if you're not prepared to die for that, then you're not in the right arena.
Chris Close, thanks for your time.
Cheers.